Sorry. All righty, guys, we'll get started here. So today we're going over effective communication. Do you guys know what effective communication is?
Stuff that works. Talking to make the sale.
Communicating effectively.
Communicating effectively.
That's probably the most important part of our job. So if we can't communicate effectively, it's gonna be rough.
You get mad.
You're gonna have a rough time working with a client if you can't communicate not only the information that we have to tell the client, but other information or trying to get information out of them, figure out what they want. So for the couple, I mean, I think there's only one person that's on Zoom that doesn't know who I am yet, other than we kind of met in person. I'm Evo. Do you guys know who I am? No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, Evo.
I've been doing sales for probably like the last 9-ish, 10 years. I've been a real estate agent for almost 2. I got to renew my stuff here soon. I just got the alert today. It's like, yeah, it's like, hey, renew your stuff. Mine's in June. So I gotta finish all my CE classes. So don't forget to get your CE classes. We have another one on the 26th.
I thought,
Yeah. So I'm gonna send out the stuff for that. I just finalized the sponsors, so I'm gonna send that out this week. But yeah, make sure you do your CE or else you have to take the stupid test.
So that'd be 2 of your what?
Yeah, that'll be 2 of the rest of all the others I need. Before this, I used to do, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but it's called Console Plus. It's a store. It's like a furniture electronics store. It's kind of like a Best Buy, but they also sell furniture. And everybody works on commission sales.
It was fairly new 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they haven't been in Arizona that long, honestly. I think in total like 7 years. I used to be the store manager of the one in Chandler. So the one in Chandler, I used to run that store, and then we had like a sales team of like 15 or so people. The sales is a little bit different. Obviously, we're trying to get someone to spend money that day, as opposed to for us, like it's going to take a month or a month and a half, to get somebody to spend. But also, again, you're talking about the most that people are spending at a regular store is probably like, I mean, the biggest sale I've done is like $22,000. So someone buying all stuff for their brand new house, and as opposed to a house where it's like millions of dollars potentially. So obviously, the amount of time that it's going to take to sell that is going to be longer. You know what I mean? And then the big thing that's super important for me for like effective, I'm super, I don't want to say anal, but like, I want to make sure that I'm communicating the right message so that we can get to where we want to go a lot quicker. Because a lot of times if you're not communicating with your client properly or explaining the right stuff to them or asking the right stuff, it becomes very difficult to kind of discern what they are wanting to do. And then not only for you, you get frustrated because then you're doing the same thing over and over with them, or you're showing them multiple homes, you're showing them 20 homes and you're like, man, this is taking a month for them, as long as you ask the right kind of questions and you kind of, to be honest, I'm probably maybe more blunt than most people. If you just kind of get to the point and instead of trying to beat around the bush and be like, well, and just tell them what is going on and what it's going to look like, you get to the point a lot faster, and generally then it doesn't take as long to do what we need to do. I want the process to be as short as possible, and I want it to be, for the client, I want it to be as easy as possible. I want to make sure they understand what's going on and they feel comfortable with everything. And if your client tells you like, hey, it was super easy, it was great, I felt comfortable with everything, that means you're communicating properly with them. Or at least with them, you guys have a good rapport and you guys can communicate effectively with each other. So don't mind me if I refer to this because I haven't practiced this. So
fine.
So yeah, obviously there's a few different types of communication. Obviously my favorite one is body language or nonverbal communication. We're going to cover that, but there's verbal communication, nonverbal communication, like asking effective questions, or also with that, you're also going to have like active listening, which is something I do a lot because, to be honest with you, I don't listen that much. If you guys can't tell, I talk more than I listen. So whenever I'm with clients, I have to always curb that, urge to be like, yeah, okay, so this thing is that, so, and then also too, just building rapport. So those are probably the only things I'm good at, building rapport and maybe talking to people pretty good. The rest of the stuff is up in the air, But to be honest, it's really all you need to actually sell a house. to me, honestly, selling a house is easier than selling a car or selling, stuff for people's house, the stuff that goes inside the house, or like selling mattresses or stuff like that, because the house obviously someone needs, and it's also very dependent on whether or not the person likes it. As opposed to, yes, there are ways for us to build value in something, in a house, obviously, with like, the types of loans we have, or, different investing options and stuff like that. But again, it's really going to come down to ultimately if the client likes the house or if they don't like the house. Again, that's kind of the same thing with some of the other, like, I guess smaller ticket items and stuff like that. But again, you have to build a lot more value because it's not necessarily something people necessarily need, as opposed to, if I'm trying to sell you a $1,000 TV compared to a $4,000 TV, there's a very weird justification on why I have to convince you to buy a $4,000 one as opposed to buying this $1,000 one. Houses, the price of houses, yes, they differ, but obviously there's so much variation in housing that it's easier to, it's more plain to see why something is priced differently or something like that, as opposed to other stuff. So to be honest with you, I think it's honestly easier to sell houses than it is to sell other stuff like that. So we'll go over that and we'll cover that stuff. We'll do a little exercise too. So I want to try to make the classes a little bit more interactive because most of the time it's just like me talking or Mike talking, and not really that much input from you guys. So towards the end, we'll go over and we'll do some little role plays and stuff. And then we'll do some on like just like talking to people in person and kind of like building rapport with the stranger. And then we'll also do some on like phone calls potentially if you want. We can even do that for the Zoom people since they're on Zoom. They can be our phone call people since we can't see them. I don't want to go 2 minutes. Just want to see which ones. Just want to see which order I want to cover it in. Okay. So again, really it's not really complicated to explain verbal communication. The main thing is we just need to be like very clear and concise when we're explaining things to people. The biggest red flag for me is when I ask somebody to explain something to me. If I ask somebody to explain to me the process of buying a home, if they can't explain it in like 5 or 6 sentences and it takes them, 10 minutes to explain it to you, something's wrong. Generally, when someone can't explain something very simply, it's because they don't fully understand the process. So when you're explaining, a lot of people will tend to think like a lot of agents or just normal people in general, we kind of overthink a lot of stuff. So generally we'll kind of go into a situation thinking, well, I need to make sure I explain it to them and give them a lot of information. Most people don't need a lot of information. They just want a clear answer. So generally when you're talking, with the client or, this is not even just for clients, it's literally with anybody, but generally when you're talking with a client or someone's asking you a question, there's a big difference between you can tell someone who knows what they're talking about and doesn't know what they're talking about. If you go and you talk to somebody or say, you go to what's something that you guys do that you would go to a store or something to like ask somebody questions about something, or even just like you go to ask somebody their advice for a purchase or something you're going to be.
A phone.
Okay. I just buy my phones on my phone, but yes. But if you go to the store, okay. So we'll use the example of a phone. So especially, and I don't want to be like, ageist or anything, especially for people that aren't super technologically, savvy, they just need to know exactly what it does and the easiest possible way. If you explain all the minutia of like, well, the phone has a SIM card, and you start explaining all this stuff and all these features, especially stuff that the client's probably not going to use, it's kind of irrelevant. There's only a few reasons why people generally buy things. Most of the time, especially for houses, it's like, oh, I like this one. It's honestly, the main reason is because people are kind of like, I like the vibe of this house. Gives me good vibes. I like the look of it. I like the location. That's mainly the reasons why they're buying the house. Yes, there are other factors, but again, that's kind of the biggest thing. And a lot of people use, the vibe or the feeling of something. And then they use other rationalizations to kind of justify that feeling that they have. So even if the house, like, let's just say, even if the house didn't financially make sense, but they just really loved the way it looked, they're going to find ways to justify why it's a good purchase and stuff like that, or why they want to pick this one with, oh, well, I'll be able to, invest my money and stuff like that. And it's like, well, you could probably buy a different house and you'd make more money off it, but again, and that's a big thing. I like to make sure that when I'm talking to my clients, granted, I do talk a lot in general. Generally, if you're with me, and Mercedes knows because we went. Generally, I talk a lot normally. When we're with clients, I don't really talk that much. Yeah, I just kind of stand around, observe, and ask very specific questions. So, because I just want to get information stuff and stuff from them. So I've slowly over time, just because I do generally over-explain or over communicate stuff sometimes, I've kind of tried to curb that, urge of like talking when there's weird, awkward silence or nothing's going on. So I always just make sure I just ask very clear, concise questions that get to the point. If I'm explaining something to a client, especially, I want to make sure that whatever I'm explaining is clear and I understand. Like, so for example, anybody ask me a question on some specific thing, about the home buying process.
What's a good location in Santan Valley?
A good location to buy a house.
To buy a house in Santan Valley.
Most of Santan Valley is pretty good. It's all really relatively new. So really, I don't think you'd go wrong with any place over there. So
How about schools?
schools, don't go to any of the schools in Santan Valley. That's where I went to school. No, but so again, there's lots of ways to do it, but just for that example, I only really said like a couple words like, oh yeah, a lot of Santan, for one, you can kind of get into a gray area with saying like, is it a good location? So I don't normally explain that, but when you explain it, I'm just saying, yeah, a lot of areas are good in Santan Valley, so you should be just fine buying a house anywhere over there. Done. I'm not going, well, they've been building a lot of stuff out there lately, and it's been they have a lot of stuff expanding out there, and I know the property values. They don't care. The question they asked is, should I buy a house over there, or do you like that area, or whatever it is, or yes. I try to be short, simple, to the point. If someone asks me, hey, does a home warranty cover, if one of my appliances breaks? Yes. I don't need to explain it. We can go into detail later on if they continue to ask more questions about it.
Mhm.
But generally, if you just say, yes, or, just kind of get to the point, they'll be like, oh, okay, good. And not only does it kind of reflect on you, they're like, okay, well, this person's confident, so they obviously know, I don't have any reason to question them. So, or just to give you a more specific example, because again, I honestly think selling a house is a lot easier than doing most kinds of sales. Not to say that it's not difficult, but I'm saying kind of getting them to pick a house is a lot easier than, the rest of the stuff is the difficult part, all the paperwork and the extra stuff on the back end and stuff like that. But just to give you a more specific example, we used to sell, like with our products, we used to sell warranties. So, and our warranties are pretty expensive. So if you want to buy something, don't go to Commons.
The juice on the end of the product.
Yeah, we get paid. We used to get paid a lot more on the warranty than we got paid on the item.
Oh, yeah.
So if we were selling a fridge to someone, we're also going to sell them a $400, warranty. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That I get paid 10% on, as opposed to I make, $20 or $10 on selling the appliance.
Right.
So we had to try to build a lot of justification in why the warranty was good. There's two ways to do that. What I think is the better way, which most people want to know, and it's the easier answer, and it's also honestly less work for you. You could sit there, and a lot of times we literally would sit down and be like, okay, hey, we would do role playing, and we'd say, hey guys, okay, sit down here. I'm going to be a client. You're going to be the salesperson. I'm going to ask you if the warranty covers this thing, and then you're going to tell me whether or not it does, and explain it to me. And 99% of the time, every salesperson would be, well, does it cover if I get a stain on the couch? That was what the client would ask. And then the sales agent would go, oh, well, the warranty covers a lot of different things. So it covers this. It also covers, if something broke. It also covers, if you had any issues, you would just call us and then the service would come out. That's not what they asked. Sure, that information is good. That information is good for them to have. But the client asked if a stain's covered. Yeah, we cover stains. And now they're like, okay, cool. Instead of generally, when a lot of times too, especially because people are going to have a kind of most people have a negative connotation of just like salespeople in general. Granted, I don't necessarily consider us like salespeople. Again, I'm not opposed to that being called a salesperson, but for us, it's a little bit easier because most of our business is going to be based on building relationships with people as opposed to actually trying to sell them something. Yes, we are selling them something, but again, but mainly it's just important because they're already going to have some kind of, hesitancy about what you're saying because they think, well, you're incentivized to sell me something as opposed to you're not my mom, I'm not your mom and you're not buying a house. So a lot of times you'll hear clients say like, well, what would you do if I was your mom? What would you tell me to do this if I was your mom? Yes, of course. Why would I not do that? I did, and my mom bought a house. So they just kind of want that reassurance, and they're already going to have hesitancy when you are explaining something to them because they think generally, and too, what do you think when someone over explains something to you? If you ask somebody, and they're like, sounds like they're kind of making excuses or trying to cover up something. A lot of times when people lie, they tend to over explain stuff. So a lot of people automatically have that triggered in their brain. Like if they're explaining all this to me and they're going so in depth, they're trying to hide something or they're making it seem confusing to me. And I don't like that. So I always try to keep it short, sweet, to the point. If a client asks, do you think the price on that house is reasonable? I'm not saying don't do your due diligence and research the property, but once you've done that, hopefully you've done that before you go to the property, show it, even if you just look it up real quick. But if the client says, do you think that price is worth it? Yeah, I think that price is worth it. I don't need to go into the details of, well, yeah, there's some other houses around the corner that are evaluated and those ones sold for X amount. And sure, yes, you could do that. Some clients may want that extra explanation, but I let them decide if they want that. I don't just give it up willingly as opposed to like, as in, I don't want to overload my client with information. If they are okay with the answer of, yeah, I think it's worth that much. And that's all I need to give them. If they say, well, why do you, or they ask you to elaborate, like, okay, you think it's worth that much? Like, are there other houses that sold in the area that are in that, price range and stuff like that? Again, but then I'm giving them more information, but if they want it, some people don't need all of that information. Some people do want all that information. So you got to also know who you're talking with and who you're dealing with to make sure you're not overloading them with stuff. The other thing too is just like, again, I even if they ask questions, I still keep the answers. Even if they're digging deeper into the same concept, I keep the answers relatively short. If they then ask me after that, like I said, are there other houses that sold in the neighborhood that support that price? I would just say, yeah, there are a couple others that have sold just recently that price too.
Well, yes, that's why I brought you here.
Well, exactly. I mean, everybody can do it a different way. And I definitely figure out what makes the most sense for you. Obviously, it has to feel natural. If you feel uncomfortable while you're explaining stuff to people, and that's kind of where we're going to get into like the body language part. If you feel uncomfortable while you're doing something, you're going to look uncomfortable. Even if you don't think you look uncomfortable, trust me, you look uncomfortable.
I think I overcompensate like that. Like
Most people do.
Yeah.
The real issue, and it's not necessarily an issue. The real difference between someone who, when you kind of over explain, generally that's because you have a lack of knowledge in that
Exactly.
specific area. Once you have a certain level of knowledge in that specific area, there comes a different level of certainty about what you know is going to happen and what you don't. When you don't know what's going to happen, it's hard to be very certain about it and project that to a client when you truly don't really know. That's why it's super important to make sure you learn, research, look up stuff. I mean, I'm a big proponent. I mean, I was a kid that was born in '95, so we were just always on the internet. I'm a big proponent of, yes, we do a lot of classes here and we do try to help you guys with that stuff, but regardless, you should constantly be looking up information. I'm a big proponent of like watching YouTube videos, find creators and stuff like that you like that, are in the real estate industry and stuff like that. Verify their credentials, make sure they actually know what they're talking about. I'm not saying just believe them unwillingly, but make sure they know what they're talking about. But again, always constantly be learning stuff, even if it's just little things like about like different details in houses, like interior design stuff, or literally anything that encompasses this thing in general. The more knowledge you have of it, I'm not saying now you have more knowledge, lay that knowledge on the clients. I'm saying just have that knowledge so So then when someone asks you, you can confidently answer them in a very concise way that they are going to feel comfortable about when you explain it to them. So again, I can tell you exactly how a TV works, and exactly why this TV is different from this TV. But I don't need to explain that to the client. I know that it's better. This one's better. That's why it's that price. I don't have to explain it to them. If they do want it, then I will give them that if they ask for that. So again, just to kind of reiterate, if a client's asking you for additional information, I'm not saying don't withhold information from them. Definitely don't do that. But kind of dole it out in pieces so that they can ingest each one and kind of make sure they understand it before you just unload, a plethora of information on all kinds of stuff. Because a lot of times you can overwhelm clients with that information, and then it makes them then think of a lot of different things, which then makes them more indecisive, which then lengthens the process or even stops the process altogether of them buying a home. So, we've all had clients that are like, yeah, there's just a lot of things going on and I don't necessarily, know what to do. And I'm not really 100% sure on what I want to do. So I'm going to wait. Again, I don't want to say it's your guys' fault. I'm not obviously picking anybody specifically, but just in general, salespeople. I'm not saying it's our fault, but it is our fault in a way because obviously we weren't explaining the information adequately enough for them to feel confident about what they are doing. Again, we're really, as much as we are selling people houses, we're really just kind of, someone already wants to do something, we're just helping them do that. So we just need to make sure they understand what they're doing. And, again, people want your opinion. Most of my clients will ask me, well, what's your opinion? Because they value my input, because I feel confident about what I'm doing. So it's always difficult to again, I keep using the word sell, but we're just going to keep using it. I'm not a big proponent of saying sell, but again, you have to feel confident in what you're selling to convince somebody else. And again, I wouldn't even say we're convincing people, but to make someone else feel confident in that, in what they're doing. If I'm, trying to sell you a house, or I'm trying to make sure you make a proper purchase on the house, or I know that this one's better than that one, I'm going to tell you, but if I don't have the knowledge to understand why one is better than the other, and I'm trying to tell you one's better than the other, it's going to come off as like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, or, they're not really sure, or it's just going to make me more unsure. Some clients won't even say anything. They won't even tell you. They'll just be like, well, we'll talk about it and we'll see what we want to do. So again, just try to be super clear. Learn as much as you can. Again, speak to other agents. What I did when I first started, granted, most of you have been in the business for a while, but we can always learn more stuff. There's never a time where you're like, cool, I'm done. I have all the information. I don't need to learn anything else now. I'm just going to lock it in here and not do anything else. If someone's doing that, they're going to have a rough time later on in the future. So you always want to learn more stuff, especially as technology progresses. Most clients, the world has definitely changed, than 30 years ago. Clients have information on their phone. If you don't know what you're talking about, they can look it up and see if you know what you're talking about. I'm not saying that information that they're looking up is accurate, because they might not understand how to search for it. But if they find a discrepancy, you immediately lose credibility with it, because they can verify what you're talking about right away. So you need to make sure you have the most updated information. Again, you don't have to unload it on them, but just make sure you know it so you feel good about what you're saying, because that is going to convey to the client. A nice little saying that one of my we had a regional manager. He was my sales manager before I was a sales manager, but I don't like him that much. But there was one thing that he always said is, sales is we're not actually selling people stuff. Sale is a transfer of emotion. It's not really, it doesn't really have to do with necessarily information. The newer way to put it, as 2023 would be, it's a transference of vibes, So it's really just a matter of, if I'm conveying certainty, the client's going to feel certain about what they're doing, especially because they're the ones relying on me to make them feel certain. That's really what our kind of job entails. So we'll go into specifics on different techniques here. one of my favorite ones is, I'm just gonna rip this apart. Is the active listening one, so we'll definitely cover that in a second here. Okay, cool. So does everybody kind of understand verbal communication? Again, it's not that complicated. We just need to make sure we're concise with when we're talking to clients. I'm going to try not to run through this because we're probably going to get through this fast. If we end early, that's fine too. Nonverbal communication is essentially everything that has to do with you not talking. So for me, it's not much because I talk most of the time. But nonverbal communication has to do with essentially your body language, you know, how you look, you know, how you present yourself, how you talk, using your hands when you talk. I use my hands a lot when I talk. You know, all of that stuff has to do with, you know, whether or not people are going to perceive you as confident or not confident. Again, the big thing that with clients, they want to feel confident in the person that they're working with because they want to make sure this person knows what they're doing. So obviously, that's probably what you want to exude. There are different ways to do that. You know, I wouldn't classify myself as like the most professional person, but that doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about. I may not be professional, but I know what I'm talking about. So, and most people understand that. That's why generally, a lot of my clients are younger. I do have some older clients. A lot of clients are like middle-aged. But sometimes when you're a younger agent, you can kind of get that distinction where some older clients may be like, well, I don't know if I want to work with that person, you know, because XYZ. I'm sure when you first started, Doug, 25 years ago, you got that, you know, or also too, they just may know that you're new. They can tell that you're new because you're not super confident in talking about specific topics. Or, you know, I'm not saying you shouldn't, it's okay not to know something. If you don't know something, that's fine. But there's different ways to communicate whether or not you know something or you don't know something. As opposed to just saying, but we'll kind of cover that. But
You come back.
yeah, that's like super easy, which is it's always funny because a lot of people don't really think about it. But yeah, but so sometimes you'll see that, and I mean, I always hear it's always funny to me. Granted, I also have the experience of just being in sales for the last like 9-10 years. So I can't say I'm like a brand new agent because for me it was very easy transition. Some people have no sales experience beforehand and they come into it with like, I don't even know, you know, and their immediate thought is, I got to sell people, you know, and they think I'm selling people stuff as opposed to this is just a relationship-based business. I need to build relationships with as many people as I can. But a lot of times, clients especially, and again, consumers are more smart these days. I don't want to say more smart, but they're more informed nowadays. They have information readily available. They can see different people doing different things. They kind of understand stuff, especially about the process. There's less mystery to the whole process than there used to be. You know, a lot of new clients will ask me, they're like, you know, I was working with this one and they said they didn't want to work with me because I was new. Or they asked me how long I'd been in the business and I told them, you know, 9 months. And they were like, oh, I'd rather go with someone who's more experienced or, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm not going to say I'm the most intelligent person. I think I'm intelligent, you know, but I don't have all the answers to stuff, but I know how to communicate. And so when I first started, my first deal came from an open house that I did 2 weeks after, or the first week I got licensed. So all I knew was, I know I need to go out there and talk to some people and I need to do an open house. So I called all the agents in my brokerage and said, hey, can I do an open house? And someone was like, no. So I just literally went there and called. At the time that the brokerage I was at, they only had like 30 people. So it didn't take long. But I called through all those people. And then one person was like, oh yeah, okay, sure, cool. Yeah, well, yeah, you can do an open house this Saturday. Do you know how to do an open house? Yeah, no problem. Again, I agree to a lot of stuff without necessarily having it all worked out, you know, but yeah, no problem. I can do an open house, you know, and then he gave me some pointers like, yeah, you know, if anything, if you don't have signs, go to Home Depot, go grab some signs, you know, some open house signs, stick them out front. And I was like, cool. I go on YouTube. I'm like, how to do an open house.
I knew you would say.
Yeah. Go on YouTube, like how to do an open house. I watched like a bunch of videos. People are like, you know, turn the lights on and, you know, put some candles in there and bring some cookies and bring some snacks. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I go to Walgreens by my house. I get some snacks and some waters and some cookies and stuff. I get some candles. I got like a whole thing of stuff. I'm like, yeah, I got some candles, I got a bunch of stuff.
Call it box.
Yeah, I go, I'm more advanced now. I have a little cart. I call it my teacher's cart for my open houses with all my stuff in it. So,
We call that the way.
yeah, I bring all that stuff and then I go to Home Depot and I go, okay, I need open house signs, I guess. I go into the sign section. I'm like, cool, I'll just grab these generic signs of like white and black open house signs.
Yeah.
I stick them out in front of the house, Then I'm like, damn, I gotta do all this stuff myself. It sucks. So I put out all my signs. I only had like 10 signs. So I put out all my signs and then, I set my stuff up in the house. I turn all the lights on, open up all the doors, open up all the blinds, make sure it looks good, light my candles. And I'm like, hopefully I don't burn this person's house down.
It's always in your mind.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And again, it's not my house. And of course the guy's listing was like an $850,000. So I'm like, hopefully I don't destroy this person's house because I have no idea what I'm doing. And then so I was like, well, I guess I watched a bunch of videos. I'll just stand here and wait for someone to come in.
YouTube said this, get it?
Yeah. So I probably had at my first open house, again, I've never sold a house. I've literally been licensed for like a week and a half. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to sell all these people. And my thought was like, I'm going to sell them this house right now. Someone's going to come in here and buy this house. No one came in and bought the house. But I just made sure, hey, cool. I just want to get to know these people. As long as they like me, they'll probably do business with me. Most people are going to do business with you as long as they like you. A lot of people do business with their friends. Their friends may never have sold a house ever, but they're like, well, that's my friend. I gotta buy a house with them. So really, the real issue is getting people to like you and making sure you kind of build enough rapport with them so that, you can, turn them into a client. Again, especially when you're first meeting someone for the first time, a lot of what, kind of goes into whether or not they're evaluating, whether or not they like you, has to do with your body language and stuff like that. Yeah. So I just made sure I acted like I know everything. I'm like, if I don't know it, I'll tell them I don't know, but I'm going to find out for them and I'll be good to go. If there's an issue, I got my mentor, I can call him if I have any questions. Cool, done. So every person came in and me, I was like super involved. So I was like, I'm going to walk every person around the house. So I literally was like, hey, welcome in. Yeah. My name's Evo. Nice to meet you. Here's my car. Here's the flyer. Let me take you around the house. Let me go find, this is the, and I'm literally like, this is the pantry. This is the bathroom. Like literally walking them through every, look at this looks fantastic. Look at this floor. Like literally just walking them around the whole house, pointing out everything. Like, I thought I was like killing this right now. Which I was, to be honest with you guys. But again, I still, from that open house, again, I met a client, this family, couple with, I think some kids, I think they had kids with them. And literally they were like, at the open house, I was like flabbergasted. He's at the open house. He's like, hey, we really interested in this house. And I was like, or perfect. I was like, you want to buy this one? And he's like, well, no, this is probably a little bit out of our price range because I just spent the last 10 minutes talking to the guy and he was like, this Evo guy is great. He was like, you're really amazing. You know so much, and I'm like, I literally was just talking about stuff. Like, look at the flooring, look at this counter, like, just random stuff. And he's like, so much information, this guy probably thought I had been selling houses for years. And so again, first guy I talked to got all his information. He said, I'm actually approved for 450 already. It's like, fantastic. Let's find you a house that's 450. So then we do the whole process. I got my first deal 20 days after being licensed. So for me, it was a very different experience than most people because most people were like, it's going to take you 6 months to sell a house. And I was like, that's a long time. I can't wait that long. I got to pay my bills. So, but for me, the big thing and the takeaway from that was more so like, it doesn't matter if I know everything or I really truly know what I'm talking about, as long as they feel as though I do. And just because of the presence that I gave off of, being very confident, walking around with them, I wasn't, in the corner being like, oh, hey guys, welcome in. There's a sign in right over there if you guys want to sign in. And then I'm on my phone and I'm like, yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Texting someone, hey, someone just walked. or the open house is slow right now.
The point is enthusiasm, your enthusiasm
Do, yes.
took them to another place for buying.
Exactly. Not only did it get them excited because they probably had never met somebody that was that excited, but also too, they were like, this guy knows what he's doing. No one's going to be this ecstatic and this excited and this, crazy about something if they don't know what they're talking about. Little did he know, I know nothing about what I'm talking
You're selling yourself as well as you're selling that house.
Exactly. So, and that's a big thing. We have to make sure that when we're doing stuff, and again, we can get, if you guys want to get more detailed with, we can get more detailed with like very specific stuff. But I'm kind of like body language. But again, I mean, even just me standing here, does it seem like I know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I could just be making this up, you guys. You don't even know. I could just have wrote this down and then I read it and then I was like, I'm going to say this. But without that extra, if I was just sitting here at the chair and I was like, okay, guys, so yeah, body language is very important. You need to make sure that you seem confident, and I can't even not do it with my hands when I'm sitting here, but it would be a very different feeling that you would get.
You'd be a very different evil.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
already know.
that's true.
So for you to do that would be right.
Yeah, and again, some of it does come naturally. I won't discredit that for sure. Some people are better at it than others. Some people just do it without thinking about it. Some people have to really think about it. I don't necessarily have to think about it that much over time as I've gotten like, I don't want to say older, I'm not really that old, but as I've gotten older, I have to think about stuff a little bit more. Not only like stuff that I say, because I can be very vulgar or very, very unprofessional, but I'm a proponent of specifically, I like to use my sentence enhancers, so I try to rein that in when I'm here. But I've kind of had to think more about, especially too, about how I'm, especially with this type of client base, like with clients buying, thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars, spending $100,000, kind of had to rein it in a little bit with some of the extraness of it and think a little bit more of like, okay, how is this going to be perceived in a way? And again, not that I'm going to let that stop me from still doing what I normally do. If a client doesn't like it, they're not going to be a client. But again, I know I kind of think about, am I sitting weird sometimes? Does this look weird? So sometimes I'll just stand up instead, and I kind of think about that stuff because I want to make sure that I'm projecting that I know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? So just to give you like an example, one example we'd always use, I wish we had like a sofa. That'd be perfect. Don't get me started on selling you a sofa. I'll sell you a sofa and a bed right now. But there's a difference between like even just sitting down. If I'm at an open house with a client and just how I'm sitting on the couch or I'm sitting with them or talking to them, if I'm sitting like this and I look really closed off like this, people are gonna think, okay, like for one, it kind of looks weird, but then also too, they think, is he nervous? Is he like, what's going on here? As opposed to if I'm sitting on the couch with them and I'm like, yeah, today's been pretty good. I've just been kind of sitting here hanging out. They're like, this guy's relaxed. He's not nervous. Obviously he feels comfortable. I'm not making him uncomfortable. So then they don't feel uncomfortable. If I look uncomfortable, they're going to feel uncomfortable. If I make things weird, they're going to make things weird. So that's why I try to always make it seem like this is just a normal thing that's happening. Everything that I do is normal, even though it's not normal. But especially too, like I know a lot of agents have issues with people signing in. They can't get anybody to ever sign in. They're like, oh no, I don't feel like signing in. I make signing in like it's a normal thing. Like it would be weird for you to not sign in. And so because I just project that so much to the clients, I'm like, hey, I have a sign in here, just sign in right there for me. And then, take a look around if you have any questions. They just can't even think to comprehend it because I'm like, I told you to sign in. That's of course, like that's the process. They just think, oh, okay, yeah, okay. I use an iPad for people to sign in, but they type it in and then they're like, okay, cool. I'm gonna walk around the house. There wasn't even a thought of like, could I not sign in? Do I have to? Is everybody doing it? They didn't even think about it because I was just so to the point and I was just like, cool, normal, move along, next thing's going. You don't want to get caught up on those things. You want to try to really practice, especially too, if you're talking with people. Again, I would recommend practicing and talking with people and kind of practicing the whole shtick or spiel or whatever you're going to do at your open house or anything like that. Or just even with clients or like buyers, and literally grab another agent and be like, hey, can we like practice a buyer consultation? And like go through and kind of explain those things. And for one, it's going to help both of you regardless, because, I always, my big thing is, especially like once you get to a certain point where you can explain something very clearly to somebody, you're going to get better and better the more you teach it. So, as you kind of teach something to someone else, even if you're not an expert, anybody can teach anybody anything. So some people know stuff, Doug probably knows stuff that I don't know. I know stuff that Doug doesn't know. Nick knows stuff that I don't know, even Mercedes, you're brand new. You know stuff that I don't know. I know stuff that you don't know. So we all have information that we can share with. So never feel like, if you're feeling like, well, that guy doesn't know anything, like, he's, XYZ or she's XYZ, but they're doing deals. Well, they're obviously doing something that I'm not doing. So maybe I should ask that person, even if they're brand new. There's always something you guys can learn from someone else. So I definitely encourage, going and learning from other people, especially in the office. Obviously, if you're in the office, or just set up meetings with people. The first thing I did when I was an agent, I just literally went on Instagram and Facebook and messaged a bunch of agents and said, hey, can I meet with you? I just want to talk about, XYZ. I'm brand new. I want to learn how you do stuff. So again, just kind of like be conscious of like kind of how you're standing, if you're standing like this, or you're like swaying or looking nervous and stuff like that. I have kind of trained myself over time to kind of like correct that stuff. So if I notice I'm like standing weird, or I'm like, pacing back and forth or sitting like this, I'll literally stop. I'll go like, okay, stop doing that now. And then I'll do something else so that it looks more normal, or so it doesn't seem like I'm uncomfortable. So try to, again, it's going to take a long time. It's not going to be easy to do that, because you're literally having to like retrain your brain to like think of things that you don't even think of. You just do them subconsciously. But kind of observe yourself. Another good thing too that you could do is record yourself. Record yourself of how you look when you're explaining something or talking to a client. I would do that. Record with your phone, and then you can kind of get a good idea of how you are coming across, and then you can kind of try to work to kind of fix some of those things, especially if you're not sure if it's conveying the message you want. There are times where you do want to convey, that I'm closed off or I'm upset or something like that. That is a possibility. You don't always want to be 100% positive. There may be things that are potentially like a bad idea for a client, and you want to, again, I don't want to get into like, ways to like convince people. But if something's not a good idea, maybe and again, this also ties in with verbal, but maybe the sound of my voice changes, or that kind of stuff. Or I just like, yeah, I guess you could do that. I seem like, well, he's not very excited about that. He probably doesn't think that's a good idea. And I'd be like, no, I don't think that's a good idea at all. Yeah, my voice is kind of the same, but my body language is, oh, that's a bad idea. Don't do that. And then they go, oh, okay, well, maybe that's bad. Maybe I shouldn't do that. That just kind of reinforces that stuff. Again, you can get into like super detailed. I'm not the kind of person, all the self-help gurus and, all the Grant Cardones of the world will talk to you about all kinds of stuff for hours and all that kind of stuff. I'm not super into that stuff. Obviously, I just think, try to make sure that whatever you're thinking, because I know a lot of us, we are very smart. We know what we're talking about. It just doesn't always come out the way we want it. So just kind of be conscious of that and kind of try to curb that, to make sure that the way you're presenting yourself, or the way that you're coming across to people, is conveying the right way. Because if you met me 2-3 years ago, you'd be like, wow, he blows a dick. He's an asshole. So, because I was just very blunt to the point. I didn't care. Now I've kind of learned, okay, I got to change kind of how I talk a little bit, not be so abrasive, and be happy. But I'm also genuinely happier because I'm not doing the job I was doing before, where I was literally just ripping people off. So sorry to all those people. But again, just kind of be conscious of how you're moving around, and like, what that may convey or look like to a client. Obviously on the phone, you don't have to worry about body language that much, but it does play into how you sound on the phone. So that's definitely something you kind of want to, think about as well. We'll go into that when we go towards the end, when we do some little role plays and stuff like that. But we'll talk about that in a second. The other big thing, let me see where we at here. Cool, we're still good. So another one of my favorite things was super helpful to me. Have you guys ever heard of active listening? Anybody on Zoom again can chime in, please.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
You've heard of active listening? Okay. You guys ever heard of that? Okay. Some of you haven't heard of it?
We call it effective listening.
Okay, either way, yeah. So this is like my favorite thing right here. This is how you active listen, because I don't actively listen. So for me, I always have a notepad or something I can write on. If I'm sitting with a client, again, I want them to understand and know that I understand what they're talking about. So not only will, when someone's talking about something, or if I'm asking the client, what kind of house do you want? They're explaining it to me like, okay, Mercedes, what kind of house are you looking for?
I'm looking for like in the mid 500s, great neighborhood.
Okay, mid
great
500s.
homes.
And then you said good neighborhood. Is there anything else specifically that you were looking for?
I would like the house to have a pool if possible.
So a pool. Okay, cool. So do you notice what I'm doing? I'm just saying the same thing that she's saying. I'm just reiterating the fact so that she knows I'm listening to what she's saying. So that she knows, okay, this guy is actively listening, and I'm reiterating what she's actually saying. A lot of times what I'll do, because to be honest with you, even me doing that is not enough for me to remember. Anything that goes in this brain, if it's not written down, it's gone. So some people are really good about remembering stuff. I can't remember anything. If you ask Sam 8 years ago when we got together what our first date was, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I don't even know what happened the first 2 years. So I'm like, I don't know. She's like, oh, don't you remember this? I'm like, not at all. I'm like, but it sounds like it was great. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm like, I don't remember most of, but I don't remember yesterday. I don't even remember what I did yesterday. But again, I have to write everything down. Some of you might not have to. I have to. But the thing that I like about it is, especially if I'm sitting with a client, I'll literally sit there with the client, and then I'll be writing stuff down while they're talking. So if they're like, yeah, I want a house that's 2,500 square feet, I'll write down, and I'll say, okay, 2,500 square feet, and then I'll write that stuff down and repeat what they're saying, not only so I can remember, but then also writing it down. But then they're like, okay, this guy is writing this stuff down. A lot of clients have had people that are like, oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, whatever have you guys ever gone to a restaurant and then the waiter comes up and they're like, okay, what are you guys looking to get? And they're like, I want the Southwest burger with no fries and extra onions. And they're just like, okay.
Mustard only?
Yeah. And then they're like, okay, cool. And for you? And you're like, wait, did you even listen to what I said? Did you write it down? Like, how do we know what's going on?
There's a lot of
What if my sandwich is going to be wrong?
Only in the restaurant.
They're encouraging that. Colleges.
Yeah.
For young adults, they're
Yeah.
encouraging them to do that.
Especially now, like our attention span is so short. I'm like, I can't remember anything. So,
I'm constantly saying,
but
you're not writing that down, and why?
yeah, exactly.
You get my meal wrong, you own that thing.
Oh, I know. Especially me, because I'm a super picky eater. So if anything in my meal is wrong, I'm always like, oh.
I'm bad too.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Not only for you to remember, because again, I have to remember stuff, so I have to write it down, but also for what it conveys to the client. If you're sitting down in that restaurant and they don't write down your order, you're thinking, hopefully it don't mess up my food. They didn't even write down what I wanted. So you're already expecting a negative result, as opposed to if I'm writing down and I'm actively, okay, you want the Southwest burger, okay, no onions, and then you're writing that down. You're like, this guy's gonna get my order right.
Last week I was talking to a customer and his wife is in California. She's going down to Venezuela to visit her family. And when I called him back, I said, first thing I said to him, how's your wife doing? Is she back in California from Venezuela, visiting her family, and is everything okay?
Yeah.
Boom.
That's another thing too. So
But I wrote it down.
the big thing with active listening, again, repeat this stuff to them so they understand that you're actually listening to what they're saying. It also will help you remember that stuff, and then write this stuff down, because this stuff also goes into like effective questions, which is essentially asking actual effective questions that kind of get to the point or that are very specific, so that I can either go back to them later on or use that to reinforce a specific point that they, may not be thinking about in that moment. We'll talk about questions in a second, but make sure, again, very, very easy to kind of like, I don't think it's a very complicated concept, to grasp, but get in the habit of writing something down while you're talking to a client. And I'm like, literally write it down in front of their face because they'll be so excited. They'll be like, they might not tell you, but they're gonna be like, this guy is, or this person is good. This person knows what I want. They're writing it down. They have it, So, I'm a big, yeah, exactly. And again, it does portray that.
You're building.
I want to make sure, I want to make sure that whatever you're telling me, I get right. That means that this person does care about what I'm actually saying.
And Mercedes could have rattled off 50 things right away. White
Yep.
fence, gate, lock, fence gotta have.
Yeah.
Diving board, it's gotta be a dive pool.
Especially too, like,
Tile roof, she could have rattled off all, and you gotta.
be ready.
4-bedroom, 3-bath,
Yeah.
no carpet.
Another thing too that's super important is a lot of people are kind of afraid to do it. If someone explains something to you or you ask a question and they answer it and you don't understand what they're asking, ask for clarification. A lot of people don't want to do that because they're like, well, if I ask them what they're talking about, then they're going to think I'm stupid. That's not the case. They would much rather that you ask and get clarification before you just do something that they don't want.
Yeah.
So I always ask for clarification if something that like a client is explaining to me, not only for my own peace of mind, because then I'm like not having to worry about it, but also too, they're going to be like, oh, okay, let me make sure he understands or they understand what I'm talking about. So they're going to be way more happy if if someone explains to me, like, if Mike tells me, hey, we want to do this specific thing. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Like, how is that supposed to look? Then I'm like, then they explain to me, I'm like, okay, so you want this to be clear. This is what you want. No, that's not what I want. Okay, explain to me one more time. I just want to make sure I get this right because I haven't had to, and I normally will refer to like, I haven't done it that way before. So just explain it to me the way you want me to do it. I'll do it that way. Or, with anything, whatever.
It's gonna happen. Someone's gonna come up to you and say, hey, I want, like they did 2 weeks ago at my open house. I want a throughway garage, a throughway. It's been in a long time.
Yeah.
Is that where it goes through?
Yeah,
Okay.
it does exactly what it says. So the garage opens on both ends
Yeah.
and they can drive right through.
Yeah. And that's something I would say. If someone asks me a term,
It's also called a tandem garage.
yeah, if someone asks me a term that I don't understand, a lot of places too, like some places in other states, they use different terms for stuff. So yeah, so like a lot of times we had a conversation about it.
Somebody called, I was online, somebody called it a rambler.
What is that?
That's very popular
What is it?
in the north. It's a 1-story house.
Oh,
Rambles
a
on.
lot of them
It
call
rambles
stuff
on.
ranches, and I'm like, what is a ranch?
Ranch style's the same thing. It's
Yeah.
a rambler.
So literally, I was at the store when I was working. I'm sitting with my employees, standing with my employees, and this one guy, Keith, super, like, this guy is huge. I mean, anybody's huge compared to me, but huge, super huge guy. He's been in the military. He's from, like, I can't even remember where he's from. I think he's from Chicago, but he's going and he's talking about something, and he's like, I'm like, because I was like in the process of getting my real estate license. I'm like, Keith, when you buy a house, I'm gonna help you buy a house. What kind of house do you want? And he's like, a ranch. And I'm like, oh, you want like land and you want to have like space and like, so, you're gonna have to live out in the boonies, like where I am. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, like a ranch. You want a ranch? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, like with like how many acres do you want? And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you said a ranch. That's what a ranch is. What's a ranch? And he's like, a ranch is a 1-story house. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like,
Now,
what?
he could have classified that a little better and said,
He couldn't.
I want a ranch with lots of property, or I want a ranch style home, which is a rambler, 1-story. It just rambles on, goes forever.
Yeah.
It's only 1 story.
And so I was like, I've never heard that in my life. So at least now I know, because I asked for clarification, what that was. But like, then also too, once you, ask for clarification, you understand what it is. Then you have another client that comes up and asks for the same thing. And you're like, I know what that is now. So again, that kind of also ties into, again, make sure you ask for clarification, write down the stuff that they're saying, reiterate what they said to you. Even sometimes too, if after they explain some long thing, literally repeat that whole thing. Okay, after they tell me all the things they want, even though while I've been talking to them, I'm like, okay, 2,500 square feet, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, this price point, this price with this. Okay, so you want me to try to find, I'll explain it to them however. You want me to try to find a 25 square foot home with 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a pool, and you want to be in this area. That's what you want, right? And then they'll tell you, yeah, no, okay, that'd be perfect. Cool,
So farmhouse is another word for a ranch.
yeah.
So you'll be able to.
Doug probably knows 17,000 words.
You probably know how old the listing agent is by the way he writes their
Oh, really?
progress report or their, in their description.
Yeah,
Farmhouse, ranch style, Rambler, you're gonna even know where they're from. They're from the Midwest, they're from out of the country, we're up, you're gonna call and ask them, where are you from? You're gonna be able to tell, they say, hell, I'm from England. Bloody Joe, I want the farmland. There you go. You want a Rambler, you want a ranch style?
Oh my God.
One story, 2,500 feet. It rambles on forever.
that's crazy. Like, just
But
like,
you're gonna hear it, you're gonna hear it all. It's funny, but that, writing it down
yeah,
is huge.
super important.
At
Yes.
this point, I just want to hear it.
Yeah, I know, right?
Look,
Yeah,
I want to-
yeah, I know, right? Yeah, exactly. You just want someone to explain something to you. So I did write down, again, I want these handouts to be things you guys can use later on. So I did write down some examples too, of different, like, just kind of give you a synopsis, so you can always look back on this stuff and you can keep it, and you can always refer to it if you just want to brush up. But again, giving a speaker full attention, like maintaining eye contact with somebody, showing actually you're interested in what they're saying. If someone's talking to you and you're like looking off to the side and you're like, yeah, they're gonna be like, person's not even listening to me. So, make sure you do that if you're talking to them, especially. Or a lot of times I'll be I won't necessarily have a pad of paper, but I'll be with a client and I'll have my phone and they'll start telling me stuff. And then I'll pull out my phone and be like, I swear I'm paying attention to you. I'm just writing it down because I will forget. So I just want to write down everything that you're saying. So I'm listening. And then I'll, start typing in and stuff like that on my phone. So again, especially too, when I'm again on the phone, you're not going to have any eye contact with someone. But when I'm on the phone with someone, I'm normally typing it on my computer or writing it down on a piece of paper. I will tell them, if I stop talking, it's because I'm writing down what you're saying. And they'll go, oh, okay, cool. So I'll just keep reiterating that. And while I'm on the phone, I'll literally be writing and they'll say, okay, 2,500, blah, 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 writing down whatever they're saying. And then if there's a weird pause because they've stopped and they can tell that I'm writing and I'm like, sorry, I'm just want to write this down real quick, make sure we're good. And then they're like, okay, cool. This guy's listening to what I'm saying. So, definitely, try that out. If you're not writing stuff down already, I would definitely do it. Obviously in Chime, as you're making your phone calls, you can put in notes.
Yeah.
So I always put in notes while I'm sitting on the computer.
It's like,
Yeah,
after every call, even after
Literally,
the
yeah.
email, if you don't get.
every single person.
Let the advisor or management know that you're at least making that call. or
Yeah.
Email.
Paraphrasing and like restating what the speaker said. We already kind of covered that, but again, just kind of make sure you're doing that. Reflecting feelings, basically, acknowledging if the speaker is like, if they're telling you about something that's like, depressing, or, they've been going through some struggles or something in their life, try to be empathetic and, be a human being. I don't know how else to explain that. If you're not doing that, you got to work on that.
Well, that'd even go as far as the sale. I don't want weeds close to my house. If there's some weeds in the yard, I don't want.
Yeah.
So you're writing that down, don't you?
You'd be like, okay, no weeds.
Obviously,
Hey,
it's been about.
There ain't gonna be no weeds in
You
this.
want to stay groomed and pretty,
Yeah,
make it look so.
someone's super passionate about something, make sure you acknowledge that stuff.
Yeah.
So that they feel as though, again, I'm not saying make them feel like you're listening, actually listen to them. But when you do that stuff, they will know that you actually care about what they're talking about. And then also just summarizing. That's the big thing I do at the end. Once we've talked about a bunch of stuff, I summarize what we talked about. And then I just make sure if they want to ask for any clarification or have any more questions, just like you would at the end of a class, hey, so we talked about all this stuff, how do you guys feel about it? Does that make sense? I ask people all the time, does that make sense what I'm explaining? Because sometimes people, I also talk fast, so I'm like, so I don't know if people understand what I'm saying. So again, you guys, I would encourage you to keep this, refer to it. There's also one, again, there's some sections on there for notes for the people that are online. You can download it and then just print it out. But I would encourage you to keep it and write down any notes and stuff like that that you take during the class and stuff like that. What time is it? Oh, I said it's supposed to end at 12.
I think so.
Oh, okay, we gotta hurry. We gotta run through this. So effective questions. Again, there's a whole section here on It's at the very back. It's on the resource page. And here's a bunch of questions. If you don't know questions to ask our clients, here's a list of questions you can ask them. You know, what type of property are you looking for? What's your budget? You know, again, I don't like to sugarcoat stuff or be like beat around the bush. You know, be like, okay, well, like what were you thinking? Maybe like price might be like, well, okay, how much do you want to spend on a house? Like short, sweet, to the point. How much do you want to spend? What's your budget? You know, have you talked to a lender? You know, ask all of those questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, get the answers from them. If they don't answer a question fully, ask for clarification or ask them to answer again. If they're like, if I'm like, oh, have you talked to a lender yet? Oh, well, you know, we talked to one, but like, you know, we weren't sure about, okay, so did you get pre-approved with them or you just talked to them initially about potentially buying? Oh, well, we just talked to them initially about buying. Okay, so you still need to get pre-approved then. Now I understand where we're at, not, you know, okay, I guess we're working on pre-approval, I guess. I don't really know what they're doing. Make sure you ask effective questions. There's a difference between asking questions and asking questions that are completely irrelevant. You know, ask questions that not only relate to what you're talking about, that also has to do with not just the sales aspect of it, but even when you're building rapport with the client, you know, if they're talking about a specific subject, you know, ask them questions, you know, get to know your client. You should be trying to get to know your client because you want them to continue to use you over and over again. So again, I put this little list in here so you guys can refer to it, especially if there's a newer agents. You can take this list. You can literally take it with you. Again, there's a million more, you know, questions and stuff like that you could add to it. Again, I ask a lot of questions and I try to get very specific answers from them. That's why it generally only takes me like a week to find someone a house. And I'm saying a week as in like, we only look for like 2 days. And then like maybe 2 days, maybe we go out once and look at 5 homes and they submit an offer because I know exactly what they want. Before we even go out, I ask them a bunch of questions, either on the phone or in person. I will narrow down their search to exactly what they're looking for. There's only going to be like 5 or 10 houses to pick from anyway. And then out of those 5 or 10, 5 of them are going to be the same. You know, they're going to look very similar. So generally it's like, okay, this is exactly what you're looking for. I'm not spending, the longest I've spent ever looking for a house for a client was like 30 days. And that was grueling because we probably went out over that month once a week or twice a week looking for houses. I probably showed them 30 houses. And I was like, I'll never do that again. I need to make sure I ask them as many questions as possible so that we can get under contract immediately. Literally I did a sale probably, I think we closed in December, just recently. And it was one in Mesa, and it was a referral from one of my lenders. They called me up and they're like, hey, they want to talk to you. They want to interview you. I never had a client actually like interview me before. Because most of the time I just seem like I know what I'm talking about so much that I've never had a client even ask me how long I've been an agent. That client that I sold the house 20 days after being licensed, they didn't even ask me how long I've been a real estate agent. They asked me after the sale and they're like, oh, so how long you been doing this? You did a great job. Everything was fantastic. It was so smooth. And I was like, about 30 days. How long did it take us to close? That long. And they were like, what? It probably made them rethink like, oh God, maybe I shouldn't trust this guy, you know, but again, because I seem like I know what I'm talking about and I know what I'm doing, again, not that I don't, but I've never had a client ask me like how many sales I've done, how long I've been an agent, if I've ever worked in that price point, which a lot of newer agents, because they just don't exude that kind of confidence or don't have the background knowledge to feel confident in themselves. A lot of people will pick up on that. And that's why you normally will see those weird questions and stuff like that. You know, when I talk to somebody, I don't get questions like that. People ask me like, how do you combat this? I'm like, I don't know because no one's ever asked me that. And they're like, how has no one ever asked you? No one ever asked me because I don't know. Well, you did something weird if they asked you that question. That's a weird question for them to ask you. You know, but again, ask very effective questions so you can get to the point as soon as possible. I don't want to spend a ton of time. Again, you know, some people are super like, it depends on how you run your business. I run my business like a business because it is a business. So I account for all my expenses. I account for exactly how much I'm making. So if it's going to take me 30 days to find a house for you, I'm calculating if I'm going to go out every day, that means I'm getting paid, you know, if I'm spending 20, 30 hours or 40 hours on this, you know, a month, I'm getting paid $20 an hour. You know, I don't want to do that for $20 an hour. So that's kind of how I think of stuff. So sometimes, even though some person may be willing to do it, I'm not willing to spend my time doing that. I can find something else or I have different clients to work with to go do that stuff. So like a lot of people, and again, there's nothing against doing rentals, by all means do rentals. I don't care if $200, $300 is not worth it for me to drive around and show you a house. At that point, I'm not making any money. Literally, it costs me more money to do a transaction for a rental than for me to even waste my time doing it. Oh, okay, yeah, no, I don't have one right now, but yeah, if I do, yeah, by all means, I get a lot of rental leads, so if you want them, I'll send them to you. But yeah, to be honest, most of the time, if someone wants to do it, and the only time I've ever done it, if it's friend. And I still charge them money to do it. So I charge them a retainer and I get whatever the people on top are paying, the buyer broker. Because I just don't, not that it's not a waste of time. Obviously, I know it's important for people and people do need places to live. Just for me, I'm just so busy that I don't have time to run around for a couple $100. So, if it's taking me 30, 40 days to find you a house, again, I fixed that problem. So now because I'm asking enough questions, I don't really run into that. Back to the story that I was saying, I got sidetracked, but I had a client in December, we closed, they called me up. I'd never had a client interview me before. He asked me a bunch of questions and I was like, yes, blah, 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 blah. And then she said, how long have you been doing this? And I'm like, probably like 19, 18 months or something like that. And then she's like, okay, how long is it going to take for us to find a house? And I'm like, I don't know, like a week. And she's like, well, like how long, like could it take longer than that? I'm like, I mean, it could take as long as you want. And I want to make sure you find the house that you want. So however long it takes you to do that, that's fine. That's what we got to do. But, I've never had a client take more than a week. And she's like, okay, well, it's probably gonna take a while because we're pretty picky. Okay, that's fine. We start looking at houses. We went under contract 3 days later.
I like that word picky.
Yeah. And again, I always like to say that words are relatives, words are relative. Some people, my version of expensive may be completely different from someone else's version of expensive. My version of modern might look completely different than someone else's version of modern. So I always ask for clarification when I'm asking these questions so that I understand what they're actually talking about. Because, I might think that, expensive is, for me, expensive would be like, I don't know, $2 million on a house. I mean, $1 million really isn't even that expensive anymore, but that is in my frame of reference as in like what's expensive for a house or what I think is an absurd amount to pay for a home or something like that. A client's version of expensive might be $350,000. So,
what they make.
exactly. So, and that's the thing.
Expensive is what I cannot afford.
Exactly.
For me, if expensive and he's making $2 billion a week, or
Yeah,
as a pro football player or whatever, they're making a lot of money.
exactly.
So they don't know expensive. They
Yeah.
just want to know.
So that's why, yeah, I always ask for that clarification so that I'm not unsure about what they're talking about.
Exactly.
Because again, it's kind of all relative. If someone's like, well, do you think it looks good? I'm like, whether I think it looks good is basically irrelevant. It's your house. You have to live in it. I do like the style of it, sure, but I don't think that's necessarily, and I will literally say it just like this. I don't necessarily think, that's just my opinion. That has nothing to do with you. You might feel differently. I want you to feel however you feel about it. We're going to make the decision based on how you feel, not how I feel.
Mhm.
I think that buying any house is a great idea. There are houses that are better ideas than others, but I think that just buying a house in general is a better idea, and not just because I get paid for it, because I think it's a good idea.
Good and bad.
Yeah, but just because I like something doesn't mean you should like it, and I don't want you to buy something based on whether or not I think it's a good idea. So, but yeah, just always ask for clarification when you're going over stuff with the client, and make sure you're, asking enough questions so that you have enough information to be able to make an accurate, decision on like whether or not this is something that they might like. Literally, I get down to like the microcosms of like exactly what they're looking for, to the point where I won't even send my client knows that the properties that I'm going to send them, there was no other properties that they would have liked. So I know when I'm looking at the list of homes, I'm like, they're not going to like that. They're not going to like that. They'll like that one. They'll like that one. Cool. I'm going to send them those two. I know they'll like those ones. So, and then immediately that's the thing. Once I know exactly what they want, I pick out the ones that I know they're going to like for sure. And then we're done, again, too, some of people think we maybe, I'm not saying we won't miss stuff. We maybe think we did a really good job, but we didn't ask for full clarification. We go and see a house and they're like, I don't know. I don't know. This one feels kind of weird. always ask for clarification. We should be asking additional questions after that. You know, one thing that people never do is like, you know, after every time I show a house, I'm like, okay, what do you think about this house? Tell me what you think. Not just, okay, cool, let's go to the next one then. Yeah, let's go to the next. Okay, what do you think? Do you like this one? Do you not like this one? You know, they might be like, it's all right. What does that mean? What do you, well, like, what's all right about it? You know, I will always keep asking and digging so I can get clarification.
I do a scale of 1 to 10, what is it?
Yeah,
5, 4, 8, what is it? And then clarify why that's 4, 3.
exactly.
I tell them in our meeting that if you drive up to the front of this house and you absolutely say, I hate that. Let's go, why are we looking at it?
Yeah,
Let's go to the bedroom.
that's happened a lot of times. Like, I'm
Yeah,
going out
it's
to
a lot.
a house and they're like, actually, I don't even like this one. I'm like, cool, let's skip it. Have a good one. I'm not gonna try to convince you to buy a house that you don't like.
$5 a gallon is tough to watch, you know, except for Evo, he drives the battery, but, that's.
I'm gonna get a bicycle. Yeah,
We'll do the trike thing with you.
Yeah.
But you gotta tell them that, hey, you absolutely hate the color of that front door or whatever. Even though it's a gallon of paint, the cheapest appliance in the world, we can fix that. But
Yeah.
if you don't like the bones of this thing, right away, let's get out of here.
that's what I always tell people. That's how I bought my house, you know. Obviously, again, it's gonna depend on your clients. Some clients might want move-in ready stuff. Some clients might not want move-in ready. That might be okay with that.
Your client,
You need to make sure you understand that.
good rapport.
It's fine, like everything you're saying. My first client was a bomb. I feel like everything you're saying, because it was my first client, I like, I'm like rethinking of all the things that I should have done. And I feel like.
Now you're gonna just beat yourself up.
Like
Not-
not like a failure, but I feel like I could have done things so differently, and had I probably would have been able to close that sale because I was so nervous and excited at the same time.
Yeah,
I oversold it. And so when the client came to see it, he was like, this is not, because it was an out of state.
yeah,
Like, this is not exactly what you portrayed it, right? Even though we just FaceTime, whatever. But I didn't really look at the fine parts of it, because I was just so excited.
I mean,
about
you're
closing
brand
the
new
deal.
too. You don't even think about it.
So.
I mean, I bought my house and like when we went and saw it, we're like, wow, this looks great. You know, fantastic. We like the structure. You know, we can fix the stuff up that we want to fix. Perfect. We moved in and I was like, oh my God, this place is just disgusting. We literally spent days cleaning. I was like, how did we not notice this? Like, what is going on here? I'm like, this place looks rough. And I'm like, man, we really didn't pay attention. And I mean, most clients, to be honest with you, won't pay attention when they kind of look at a house. But again, like, it's just like some of that stuff you don't think of. Obviously, as you do it, you're gonna learn more about like the things that you should be looking at and kind of like to check on. You can even write down a list of things for you to check when you're doing a showing and stuff like that, so that you can just have that information. But again, you know, I always make sure I ask it, and don't feel like you failed. I mean, I'm a big proponent of like, if people ask me like, you know, do you regret anything? I don't ever regret anything, you know, not a religious person or anything like that, but I'm just thinking like, you know, if I did something different, it probably wouldn't have been going the way it's going now. So
Right.
I'd rather not do it differently. So if I mess that up, I messed it up. Oh, well, I don't care. Trust me, I failed a lot of stuff. So I'm like, I failed math multiple times. You know, I went to school for like, I should be a doctor at this point, how long I went to school, but because I kept failing classes, you know, granted, I finally got the degrees, but like, because it took so long for me to do it, I'm like, I should have a doctorate or at least a master's by this point. You know, all the money I've spent, you know, I mean, there's been multiple times where I've done sales where I ended up, you know, giving a concession to a client, and I'm just like, I shouldn't have given them that concession. I shouldn't have discounted my services, you know, and it just caused a whole issue with that entire transaction. You know, so I mean, you're gonna mess up on a lot of stuff. You're gonna lose clients. That's okay. That's normal. Don't worry about it. Granted, again, I wouldn't say we lost the client, so don't worry about that. You know,
hoping.
we're just waiting until he comes back from his vacation. But you know,
The only way we learn.
yeah, I mean, you're not gonna know without doing it and fucking it up and then, you know, doing it again. So, you know, trust me,
You
I had
always
to do it a
go
million
on a
times.
experienced buyer sale or open or showing of the house.
Definitely.
And that would
Yeah.
help. You can take notes and just say, hey, I would just say this is Mercedes, my assistant. She's gonna guide you along and take notes.
I was Mercedes assistant.
And that would be the way to look at something, and everybody
Yeah.
would
And I would,
That's what you're gonna know.
yeah, I would encourage, I know that, we're either in like relentless agent training or, we're on a team and we're paying up for all this stuff and we're like, cool, like I'm being trained. That doesn't mean that you need to you should be only relying on other people to give you that information. You should still be going out to find that information. If there are agents, Bell, if there's agents in your office that, are doing multiple transactions, Araceli's doing a ton of transactions. Some of those agents should be going with her on, showings or,
Yes. Recommend it.
yeah, I mean, I would go,
Especially when you're new.
yeah, any of you guys, go and talk to all of the agents in the brokerage, see who's doing well, see who's doing, what you want to be doing and ask them, hey, can I just tag along with you and go to showings or, go to your bio consultations? Or, I mean, Brian just did one in the office the other day and Doug sat behind him and eavesdropped and was like, that was amazing.
It was clarified to the max.
Yeah.
I was impressed. And don't ever think you cannot learn something. Been in it 28 years. I learned something from Brian yesterday. And it's just reiterating what you think you know and reading to the client. This is this is that, and getting. I'm doing an open house Saturday if you want to come join me.
I'm just picked up an open house from Jennifer, I think, right?
Nice.
But
Okay.
thank you.
Nice.
Yeah,
I mean, you can always go and see what the other person does.
Yeah.
How they break the ice to clients, how they get them to smile, how they get them to sign in.
yeah. Thank you.
Stop.
So yeah, we'll let me see how much time we have here. We might go a little bit over, but the next Zoom is going to be for the next slide. I just want to check the schedule real fast, guys, to make sure we're not going too far over.
12:30 is the next class.
12:30.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can go to 12.
I thought I was gonna get through this way faster, and actually way longer than I anticipated.
Very knowledgeable.
Come back to Zoom. There we go. So yeah, building rapport, we've already kind of covered. The main thing I would say that people don't necessarily focus on that much. I mean, I'm a huge advocate for doing open houses. I know people hate them. It's kind of boring. That's my favorite thing to do. When I first started, I did open house every single week. Every single weekend, I did an open house. I know Mike said he did like 8 a week. I'm not doing any, but I did one every single weekend, whether I was doing ones for people in my brokerage. Again, I would contact as many agents as you can. Like I got lucky because I had an agent that was at my previous brokerage that did a flat fee. So he just had constant listings all the time because he was only charging like $3,500 to list their house. So he had constant listings all the time. And I was just like, hey, can I just do all of your open houses for all your listings? And he's like, cool, because I don't want to do any of that stuff because I'm only getting paid $3,500. So I was like, awesome. So I did a ton of open houses for every single time you got a listing, send me over the listing. I go and do an open house. I even do open houses for other brokerages. You can do open houses for other brokerages as well. Get in touch with an agent over there. I've done, if you guys have heard of Limitless Real Estate, I do open houses for them and Blake every once in a while. As long as both brokers approve it, it's fine. Got to get it in writing, make sure you get it in writing. I literally would just go on the MLS and call people, and I would see what listings had open houses scheduled for that weekend. And then I would literally just call them and I'd say, hey, I'm a new agent, I'm willing to do a free open house for you. I'll do all the marketing. I'll bring all the signs. I'll bring all the snacks and everything. You don't have to do anything. I just want to see if I can do an open house for you. And then again, all I need is an email from your broker saying I can do it, and I'll send it over to my broker and make sure we're good. And most people be like, oh, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, if you want to do that, because most of them don't want to do it, and then I'd go and do it for them. Some brokerages won't allow you to do it. I think HomeSmart and a couple others won't let you, but I just call anyway to see, you never know. But I would do open houses every weekend. The big thing to me about building rapport is, and some people, we kind of covered it a little bit when we talked about in the buyer broker class, when we talked about like my process, because I remember I talked about my process for like going over disclosures and stuff like that with clients and doing that. And they're like, you need to do that right away. I want to meet the person first. So, for Veronica, she was like, I'm not going to drive to a location for a house if they're not even ready to, they're not willing to sign all the documents and be like official. And I'm like, I'm going to get a higher retention rate. And again, granted, she has a different business structure than I do, but I'm going to get a higher retention rate if I'm an actual person. If I'm just a person on the phone, the likelihood that they're going to feel obligated to use me for some reason is a lot lower than if I go meet them at a house in person, show them a house, talk to them and interact with them. I'm going to ask them questions. Even again, we kind of touched on building rapport already, but I'm going to ask them questions about their life, what they do for fun, all of that stuff. When you do that stuff and you just talk to people like you're a normal person, people try to think we got to do that's like, I got to be my real estate self. And then I do like my friends stuff with my friends. I talk to my clients just like I talk to my friends, just like I talk to my boss, just like I talk to anybody. I don't change it up. Sometimes I may take out a few cuss words, but that's about it. Sometimes, yeah. If I'm thinking about it, if I'm actively thinking about it, that's how you know if I'm actively thinking about it. If you don't hear me cuss at all, you're like, wow, he was doing good. I'm thinking about it. Trust me.
And there's a couple of.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you 1 second. Because I've been trying to do the open houses, but we're literally running out of, listings. The good thing is they're pending or.
Yeah. A lot of
You call agents for advertising open houses?
no. I go in the MLS and I just look at houses that don't have open houses listed for that weekend.
Don't have.
Yeah, and then I call the listing agent, whether they're with my brokerage or not. And then I just say, hey, I saw you didn't have an open house scheduled this weekend. I just wanted to see if it was possible if I could do it. And I would say a free open house for you. I'm going to pay for all this stuff. I'm going to bring all this stuff. You just got to, as long as it's okay with you and your broker, I'll just come at whatever time works for you and your client. That's what I do. And then a lot of them will say, yeah, sure. And I've done that a million times. Again, I also go through Facebook, Instagram, and like connect with a lot of agents. So that's another way to do it. Like I think I met Blake from Limitless. He's the broker over there. And one of his top producing agents, Paige, she gets a lot of listings. Some of them are super duper expensive. I don't necessarily like doing the super duper expensive ones because they're like 2 million, 1.3 million. You're probably not going to get some regular people walking in because most of my business is around the 500,000-600,000 price range. But we can get more into that later on. But I try to aim for like a house that's in like the 6s or 7s, because then I probably get someone that's definitely pre-approved for like 450, 500, because people always look at stuff they can't afford. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I try to strategize my open houses. I know Mike gets like super in depth with like how many turns and this and that. I don't honestly, and if you haven't noticed already, I don't think things through a lot, and I don't like spending time thinking through things. I don't think about all the content I'm going to post on social media. I just kind of post it as I go. I don't think about, oh, is there 7 turns at this? I don't care. I'm just going to do the open house of it. Looks like a good house and it might have some traffic. That's all I look at. I'm not super in depth with it. Some people can, some people like to do that. By all means, go ahead. But again, this back kind of tying into open houses too. When a client comes into the open house, what do you think you talk about with them?
House.
No, I never talk about the house with the client.
Okay.
It's okay. It's not wrong. It's not a wrong answer. You will inevitably talk about it. But I always just talk about, hey guys, welcome in. I always have a little basket of cookies. I'm like, y'all want some cookies? Because I've had enough cookies.
So you're breaking the ice.
Yeah, I'm like, honestly, please take some of these cookies because I really don't need any more.
I always talk about the weather. Sorry, and they're dressed in shorts. They're from Chicago. They are. They're white skinned, white haired, whatever. I always say, hey guys, I apologize for the weather today. It really sucks. But here we are at an open house. Can I get you guys to sign in here, please? Awesome. I also have this digital. You can do it by your phone.
Yeah.
I prefer that because it goes right to our chat.
Yeah.
I don't tell them that, but that's.
No, yeah.
You don't even know.
Exactly.
But you break the ice, and that's the.
Yeah.
the key.
I just talk about random stuff, literally anything,
That's
other than
your
sports.
client.
If they talk to me about sports, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh God, I'm gone.
You're
I'm
not
like, never mind, just leave.
not watching the game.
Yeah, I'm like, what? There's a game? I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, sports, I don't know anything about sports. So if clients ask me about sports, I just go, oh yeah, they're good, right? And I just always ask them questions about it. And then they're like, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not a big sports watcher. And then
What's the?
that always freaks them out when they're like, you don't watch sports? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So,
I don't
But,
either, and I'll always say something that's really stupid, like, how many runs in a football game? Or something like that, How many outs in a football game?
Yeah, football game. What?
yeah, whenever they talk about baseball, I go, those are the San Francisco 49ers, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, honey, we're out of here.
Yeah, but yeah, sports.
Eagle, you're offending me right
Yeah, I know. This lady, they're all baseball over here.
Me
So,
too, me too.
yeah, I just don't know anything about sports, but again, read up on some of it, I guess.
You have to feed off of what you eat, and that's it. I always go with the weather.
Yeah,
They're from out of town, they're in shorts.
I'll talk about random stuff
I
like,
said, wait till you see this patio, that
Yeah.
sun's gonna be beautiful, you're gonna love it. So
I talk about like, oh, like, yeah, or I'll just literally make stuff up. I'm really good at filling space, like filling empty like space with talking. So I'll normally just be like, oh yeah, what you guys been up to today? Oh, you drive around. Where'd you guys go? Where'd you guys go? Oh, we got lunch. Oh, where'd you get lunch at? I'm hungry. I've been sitting in here all day and I'm starving. And I'm like, where'd you guys go? Because I think maybe I'll DoorDash something. And then they'll just be like, oh yeah, you could. And then we'll just start talking about random stuff. I just try to talk to them about anything random until like finally, we'll be, and then a lot of times they'll end up talking about something that they like. And then I'm like, cool. Then I don't have to think of stuff. Then I can just ask them questions and stuff like that. But then I kind of get to know them and then they like me. And then eventually we'll start talking about the house or they'll ask a question about the house and then we'll kind of go into that whole thing. But I don't try to talk about any real estate stuff.
I said,
No.
yeah, kids, here's the.
I hate kids. I never talk about.
Just say, hey, kids, here's the house, go pick your rooms. They're gone. Guys, you can go sign us in, sign you in. If
If people come with kids, I tell them to take their kids out of here.
No, I tell them, go pick your room. Then they put pressure on them all day. Yeah, you see that room in there? It was the bomb, full of baseball stuff and everything. Let's go look. They're like, wow, kids approved.
Yeah,
Hey,
I don't have kids, so I never talk about kids. I also don't like children, but that's just me. But they'll ask me, they'll be like, oh God, the kids and this and that. And I'm like, oh, cool. My immediate go-to is, oh yeah, I have 3. And then they go, oh, really? Because I look young. And then I'm like, yeah, one's 8, the other one's probably about 4. Yeah, I'm like, one's probably about 4. And then like, this guy doesn't know the age of his children. And then I'm like, and the other one's like 2. And they're like, I'm like, but they're dogs, so And then they're like, oh, okay. I always like, you can call them like dad jokes. They're not necessarily dad jokes. My favorite joke, if you guys haven't heard me say it, is when someone asks me something, I just say no. So that's my favorite joke ever. If someone goes, okay, can we just take a look around? No. And then they go, what? And then I'm like, just kidding. So, but they always like, because it kind of disarms them because they think they're going to be like, yeah, So I try to like throw them off. So like whenever they come in or they ask me a question like, oh, can I take some pictures so I can show my husband? Absolutely not. You can't do that at all.
That's who you are.
Yeah.
That's, that's.
Yeah. Again, figure out
your personality.
Yeah, figure out what works for you. But I always use like funny, corny jokes that I think are like absolutely hilarious. So one of my favorites is literally just telling people no, they can't do something. So especially when it's like in a situation where it's like obviously you can.
Yeah.
So
They're
they're
a friendly environment.
yeah, exactly.
No.
That's my favorite
Wow,
thing.
can't have ice cream here in an ice cream shop? No,
Yeah.
get out of here.
They'll be like, oh, can I take one of these flyers and keep it? No. Are you gonna buy the house?
Yeah, cookie? No, those are for the skinny people.
Yeah. If they take the flyer and I'm like, no, those are for only people that are buying the house. And then they go, oh, and I'm like, don't please take the flyers. I don't want them.
Yeah.
So
Get rid of these.
So yeah, think of stuff like that. Again, I'm good at like the humorous kind of stuff. So, and I can do it generally without offending people. So, do that with caution, before you make jokes to people. But yeah, so, what else do we got here? How much? Okay, we're over, but, I don't know how many people are staying on for the, Barrett app, one, but and honestly, we're not going to have time to try any of these out. To be honest, I thought I was going to get through this way faster, but we kind of have exchanged ideas and stuff like that already.
Yeah.
So just the last thing I want to do is just kind of touch on overcoming objections. Again, I don't ever really think that we're necessarily, even though I do sales and I've done it for a long time, my mental, sphere of people, I would, I don't even know how to word it, the type of people I would have looked up to before as compared to now is very different. So I'm not into the very like sales, motivational speaking, stuff like that. overcoming objections, like, you gotta break it down to the penny, take whatever their objections. I don't care about that, to be honest with you. So I don't ever go super into detail with that. And to me, honestly, a lot of clients can see through when you're trying to like do these techniques to like, break down their objection or do whatever. Generally what I do, and obviously what just makes the most sense in my mind, is I've asked them a bunch of questions, I've written them down. If they have an objection, like, oh, well, interest rates are really expensive right now, so we just think we're gonna wait. Well, you said you wanted to buy, and I have this written down or I have it on me. A very not so like politically correct way of saying like what I used to do. I used to explain it as, we have a gun. And the questions that we ask when they give us the answers are bullets. And then so we would shoot the objections. And I wouldn't use that example now, but
Sales technique. It's
yeah.
way-
So again, when you're asking these questions to the clients to try to find out what they're looking for, that is kind of your ammo for like when they do have objections, you can reiterate to those things that they said to kind of reinforce why they should do something. Because a lot of people, the objection that they're coming up with is generally like something that's, it's not really that. There are things that are like true objections, as in like, my credit is bad and I cannot qualify.
Right.
That's nothing, there's nothing you can do to overcome that. That I wouldn't even qualify that as an objection. That's just like a literally stopping point. We can't do anything. We have to do these things to fix it first. I'm not saying that doesn't mean stop. I'm saying we need to do other stuff to fix that first before we can even go into this process. But objection is more like something that's not necessarily, it's not really something that's stopping them. It's more just like a feeling or, an idea that they have that they haven't fully, or just something that they don't feel super confident in. So they're trying to think of a reason to not have to go think about all that stuff right now. So, if someone says, oh, well, we want to wait till interest rates go down before we buy something. So we're probably going to wait a little bit longer. Well, you said, your lease was up in July. So, you don't have much time to kind of really, were you planning it? And then I just ask more questions. You said your lease was up in July. Are you planning on then like signing another lease, or, how are you going to navigate that? If they're like, oh, well, no, we didn't really want to sign another lease because they're raising it. And then it's like, okay, well, if you wait, to be honest, from what it sounds like, it's going to be a lot more expensive for you to wait. I know you're concerned about the interest rates, but we can get potentially seller concessions or some other ways to pay down that rate. So it's not going to affect you as much. I'm not saying it's going to be 1%, but if it's 6.5 right now, we might be able to get it down to 5, or, depending on who knows? I've been seeing concessions. I mean, the last deal I had that was under contract had 4% concessions. So, I mean, it's entirely possible you could get a deal with that much concessions that you might even get it down to like 4.5, depending on how many points you buy. So there are still ways to kind of combat that. And a lot of times, like, I'll give you a specific example. Even my friend, I have a friend that's pre-qualified to buy a house. It's been a task to try to get them to actually start moving on it, because for one, they already own a house. They're just buying another house. But so that's already kind of like a sticking point there, because they don't necessarily need to. But again, she was like, oh, well, I'm just going to wait to buy a house because the interest rates are super high. My sentence to that was, well, you can use we can get seller concessions to buy down your rate. So that won't really matter. And she was like, I guess that's true. I didn't really think about that. So even if I had just been like, oh, well, she said she wants to wait now. Okay, well, that's fine. We can wait until you're ready. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do. I'm saying, but make sure you address the objection first. Make sure that that's actually a problem. I'm saying to the point where it's like, we literally have to stop kind of thing, before you just kind of, lay down and be like, okay, that's fine. I'm not saying just give up right away, but definitely kind of seek more information. You're not going to truly know what the problem is unless you ask and you find out. Some people don't like to ask because it makes them uncomfortable. It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable kind of digging in. People are like, oh, well, that's just, a lot right now. And I don't really know if we want to, be spending $3,000 a month on a mortgage. Okay, well, how much are you spending right now on your rent? Like, how much does that cost? What do you guys have? Like a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom? We're spending like $2,200 right now. Okay, so yeah, it would be more expensive for you to definitely move. Then you can go into the different things of addressing, like, well, like, how important is it to you to like actually own a home and be like gaining value in it? then you can kind of start asking those harder questions that are gonna pull out more details. But again, it might be kind of awkward to ask them those questions, honestly, because now we're digging into like your finances and stuff like that. And a lot of people get kind of weirded out. But again, if you make it seem normal, they're gonna feel like it's normal. You know, if I asked you right now, if someone called you, and said, hey, I'm trying to finish up your application. What's your social security number? Would you tell them your social security number? No. I've done that. I don't know how many times because I have to fix someone. When I had my previous job, I had to fix someone's application that they put in the system because they put it in wrong. And because I just said it like it was nothing at all, most people would be like, well, if you feel comfortable, can you give me your application, your social security so I can redo the application for you so I can make sure it's correct? You automatically put in their brain, like, should I feel comfortable? Is this something that someone should feel uncomfortable about? So I always try to just make everything, again, going back to what we were talking about before, seem just normal. So I've literally called so many people and be like, hey, I'm working on finishing up your application. I just need your social so I can finish this. And then they go, oh, okay, yeah. And then they're like, they may ask me a couple more questions. They're like, yeah, the only way for me to finish it is to get your social. I just need your social so I can type it in. And then you can come in and we can finish this. Yeah. And they'd be like, oh, okay. And then they give me their stuff. Or like there'll be times where like we needed people's bank account information. I need your account and routing number. I would literally just call and be like, hey, I need your social to finish this. And I'm also going to run you through one of our other applications. I need your account and routing number to your bank account. And they would just be like, okay, yeah, that's fine, I guess. Some people would be like, I can never get them to do the application over the phone for the bank, because we had a different one that was account and routing number. They were like, I can't get anybody to do that. And I'm like, I don't know, I never had that problem. So again, just kind of, yeah, I guess you could say assume the sale or kind of assume that they're going to give you the information. Just don't make it weird. So when you kind of have to dig into those objections, you can really you need to fully flush out the objections to truly understand what the problem is. Just because they say they want to wait or they want to talk to their wife about it doesn't necessarily mean that they actually need to do that. A lot of times too, especially I saw some statistics not that long ago. Most married women, or just married people in general, the woman is normally the one who makes the decision on the house. So if you're working with the wife, mostly, she probably doesn't need to talk to her husband to decide whether or not that's the house they're going with or something like that, or at least to give you a solid answer on what you need to do next. So I always ask people like, okay, if you liked this house, right? And they're like, yeah, this one's really great. Okay, do you want to submit an offer? We're going to submit an offer on this one then, right? Well, we're not really sure. We want to think about it. Well, okay, well, like, what are you not sure about? Most people don't think you're even going to ask them that. They'll be like, well, we just thought it was a little bit, overpriced. Okay, like overpriced is in what? Like, you don't think it's worth the price that you're paying for it? Or you just think the price is too much, like you can't afford it? Those are two different things. But because if you don't flush that out, they'd be like, well, we actually can't afford it. Okay, that's a different issue. As opposed to if they're like, well, I just don't really think it's worth that much. That's completely subjective at that point. So now we have to either build some value in the home or build value in just the fact of owning a home. So you have to evaluate those objections differently, and you have to go about them in two different ways. So you have to make sure you ask enough questions to fully understand what you're actually talking about. Because again, they're just going to hit you with like the surface level, like, yeah, we want to wait because we're not really sure. What does that mean? So again, still kind of going into like asking for clarification. Again, it's the same thing to me. That's why I don't really necessarily quantify it as like overcoming objections, because again, I'm not convincing you to buy something. I'm just giving you the information and helping you do something you're already doing. You were already going to buy a house. I'm just helping you do that now. And I'm going to make sure you understand what you're doing. So again, I like to think about it that way. Again, some people, different stuff clicks in people's brains differently. So you may hear it from one guy that's like, we got to break it down to the penny. So, really, if they say it's too expensive, then, ask them, okay, how much is that going to affect their payment? That's going to be $30 a month on their payment. Okay, $30 a month, to live in the house that you want. That's not that much more. You can go about it that way. I don't go about it that way. Sure, I may use that as like, well, we're talking about you're paying $5,000 over asking, but we're giving $22,000 in concessions or whatever it is. Really $5,000 extra is probably like $10 a month. It's not really that much money over 30 years. And then they go, I guess it's true. And they're like, that's fine. Let's just buy it you know, and considering like concessions or whatever stuff. So you have to kind of train your mind to think about stuff like that, because normal people, or I don't want to say normal people, but just most consumers don't think that way. They think about the price of the house, and that's pretty much it. And they think about the payment sometimes, but a lot of them don't even really think about the payment. You kind of have to bring them back to the fact that they're not paying, you know, if you're getting a loan for $500,000, you're not spending $500,000, you're spending $20,000 or $30,000 for whatever your down payment is, you know, that's all the money you're spending. So really, you know, you're paying a payment of $2,800 a month. Can you afford $2,800 a month? I can't afford $500,000, but can you afford $2,800? Okay, you know, if we paid a little bit more to get the deal to make sure you get the house that you want, your payment's gonna be $2,805. Is that okay? Well, I'd pay $5 more for this house. I like this house. Cool. So again, we can do more stuff and go over more stuff. I want to make sure we have enough time to jump on this Barrett app call. I think that conference room is going to be empty, and I prefer to do it on there so we can see it on the big TV screen instead of having us to do a projector. So any questions? Make it quick.
No, this is really good. Thank you so much.
Okay, cool. And then, yeah, again, use that little resource page to make sure you ask questions. Again, write down questions you want to ask clients and stuff like that. People on Zoom, again, you can download it. It should be in the chat for you guys to download. If you can't get it, just send me a text or shoot me an email and I will send you.